Hey Mixers, welcome back to another NFL video. Today we are going to talk about the AFC West, and that is the final division that we need left to cover. If you've missed all of our other videos about the NFC and the other AFC videos, go ahead and go watch those and let me know what you think. We're going to go through the schedules of the AFC West and see if there's any win totals or division bets that we can be making before the season starts. And we're going to answer that question, who's going to be dominant in the AFC West again this year? Is it going to be the Chiefs? Are they going to continue to dominate that division? Or are the other two playoff teams from that division, the Chargers and the Broncos, going to challenge them for that crown this year? We'll jump in and find out. All right, guys, so jumping into the AFC West, as you can tell from the thumbnail, I know a lot of people kind of think that the Broncos could defeat the Chiefs for that division title this year. I think it might be the Chargers instead. So I do have Justin Herbert as the thumbnail, and I asked the question, can Justin Herbert dethrone the champion Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes? Well, let's jump in and find out. I do think it would kind of be a long shot, but spoiler alert, I did already bet on it. So we're going to cover actually the Chargers first. I want to go through their schedule first, since I do think that they have the potential to possibly win this division. So last year, they went 11-6. They swept the Raiders, they swept the Broncos, and they were swept by the Chiefs. So they had 4 division wins, pretty good. And all of their losses were to playoff teams except for the Cardinals, which that obviously is an embarrassing loss. They're facing 7 playoff teams from 2024. So Justin Herbert obviously is our thumbnail. I think he's an amazing quarterback. And even though they are in a run-heavy offense now, I do think that he's an incredible passer. So they're not going to tell him not to pass the ball. They clearly trust him to pass the ball. They're just trying to run a certain system here. And that system works even better when your quarterback is also a great passing quarterback. So betting against the Chiefs is obviously not very good for your wallet, but we'll just see how it works out for me this year. So again, before you start grumbling about all the wins and losses and where exactly I'm putting them, we're not trying to find out the outcomes of every exact matchup. We can do that week to week throughout the year. What we're trying to do right now is find like an average or like a median win total to see if there's any edge on the Vegas line. So the Chargers had 4 division wins last year. I am going to bump them down to 3 this year just to be on the safe side, because I'm trying to find that median. So I do think they could win 4 again, but we'll bump them down to 3 for now. So after taking out the Broncos and the Chiefs, there's still 5 playoff teams left on the schedule. And last year, the Chargers only had wins against division playoff teams, twice against the Broncos, and then they lost every other playoff matchup that they had. So given that history, and despite the upward trajectory, I'm just going to give them 2 wins, and 3 losses based on that history, because they didn't match up well with playoff teams last year. So of the teams that are left, the Cowboys and the Jaguars should be better than last year, but they're still not going to be at the level of the Chargers, in my opinion. And the other 4 teams are like mid to bad. So out of this whole group, I'm going to give them 4 wins and 2 losses. So the way that we built this model, it shows all of the Chargers' wins in the first half of the season and all of their losses in the second half of the season. That's obviously not going to happen that way. That would be really kind of weird if that happened. That would be like the 2022 Eagles, actually. But that's not how it's going to work out. But we were just looking for that median line. So we came up with 9 wins here. And I do see them losing up to 1 more game and potentially winning up to 3 more games. So the range for me, in my eyes, is 8 to 12. And the Vegas line is 9.5. So I don't see clear value on the 9.5 line, but I do see some value in potentially betting them to win this division if they do end up on the higher end of that range and the Chiefs end up on the lower end of their range. So I'll cover the odds that I got on that at the end of the video. So next we're jumping into the division champions, the Chiefs. Their record was 15-2, but if you watched football last year, you know that that record does not show how they performed last year. They won 10 one-possession games. So what that means is 10 of those games could have been lost with a single touchdown or even just a field goal sometimes. So those were some really close games, and some of them came down to some pretty questionable calls. Now, I believe in Andy Reid. He is an amazing coach. This team has amazing coaches in general, and obviously some amazing players. So I do trust them to go out and get the win and do whatever is necessary and play exactly as hard as they need to to get those wins in those tough games. All I'm saying is that half of those games could have gone the other way very, very easily. So the Chiefs did have 5 division wins last year. I'm just going to bring them down to 4. I still think that's pretty dominant. And I think that the Broncos and the Chargers are going to give them a run for their money. The Chiefs have been a really good run stop defense. So the Chargers game is to run the ball. The Broncos game is to run the ball. And the Raiders game is to run the ball. So the Chiefs are going to match up really well with their division. But I don't know if they can pull off 5 wins again this year. So we'll see. So there's 6 playoff teams left on the schedule after we take out those teams. And the Chiefs only lost 1 game to Buffalo last year, other than the Week 18 game where the starters didn't play. So they won all of their matchups against playoff teams last year, except for the one. Despite that history, because of all the close wins last year, I am going to split this group 50-50 because we're trying to find that median. But we also are going to keep in our heads that, of course, the Chiefs are the Chiefs, and they can always do better than that. So for now, we'll split those playoff teams down the middle, 50-50. And then of the bad to mid teams, I'm going to give the Chiefs 4 wins and 1 loss there because, they could have a freak loss, possibly to the Jaguars, who might be a playoff team, possibly to, I don't know, the Giants invested a lot in their defense. Maybe they just surprised them because the Chiefs overlooked them. I don't know. They could just get 1 loss there in that group. And so this puts the Chiefs at 11 wins, which that barely overlaps with my Chargers range that I had. So the Chiefs would have to land at 11, and the Chargers would have to play out of their minds and land at 12 to take that division championship from them. But I think it's within the realm of possibility, and the Chiefs could always lose a couple more games here and there. I don't think they will. I think they're pretty safe at 10 or 11. This number is 11.5 from Vegas. So I'm staying away from this number, but I would lean under that number. Even though they did get the 15 wins last year, I would kind of lean to the under of the 11.5 number. All right, and then the Broncos, they came out of nowhere and had a great season last year after losing their first game to Seattle. After that, their only losses were to playoff teams, plus the Bengals, who kind of are a playoff team. So this year, they used a first-round pick on a cornerback. They already had the best-ranked cornerback in the league. So their secondary just became the best in the NFL, in my opinion. The no-fly zone is back in Denver, and I will be betting interceptions, whoever's playing the Broncos, every single week. I also think the game totals are probably going to be low for the most part. Obviously, there's going to be some games that go over. But they are going to have a dominant secondary defense, and teams are going to have to run the ball against them. So because of that, I don't know if the Chiefs will be able to do that this year because Patrick Mahomes, quietly threw, at one point he was leading the league in interceptions halfway through the season, which that is very unlike him, but it was kind of crazy. And so if that happens again this year, especially against, a team like the Broncos who can easily intercept the ball, I just think the Broncos have a good chance at staying in a lot of their games and winning a lot of their games. So they did have the 3 division wins last year, and I'm just going to keep them at 3 again this year. There's only 4 teams left on the Broncos schedule, plus the Bengals, that were playoff teams last year, and their non-division playoff team record was 1-2. So given that history and the fact that these 3 playoff matchups are away games, I'm going to give them 3 losses and 2 wins out of this group. So of the rest of the teams, only 2 are going to be making playoff pushes, in my opinion. So I'll give them 2 losses and 4 wins out of this group of 6. And this puts the Broncos at 9 wins. So that's exactly where I had the Chargers. If you remember, I had them at 9 wins with a range of 8 to 12. I do think that the Broncos could also win a couple more games here, but I think their ceiling is capped at 11. So that's why I like the Chargers better as a bet to defeat the Chiefs this year in the division, because I think that the Broncos ceiling is a little bit more capped, just like their matchups are a little bit harder. They have to play a lot of playoff teams on the road. So my money's on the Chargers this year, but I do think the Broncos also could have a chance of going over this 9 line. We're not getting plus money, so I'm staying away from the line. But if we were getting some plus money, I would bet it. And then the Raiders. Let's talk about the Raiders. Everyone gets excited to see the last team in the division get a really good draft pick, and then, they get way too excited, in my opinion. So I think Ashton Genty's great. I mean, it reminds me of Saquon Barkley in his rookie year with the Giants. I drafted him that year in fantasy football with my first pick. It's the only time I've ever used my number one pick on a rookie ever, and it worked out for me. So this year, though, I'm not going to be drafting Ashton Genty unless he falls pretty far in the first round, like probably towards the end of the first round. Otherwise, I'm definitely not interested in him because this team is not good. So my best preseason bet last year was that Zamir White would be a bust. I was a big fan of Josh Jacobs, and when he was traded to the Packers, I was telling everybody to draft him because it wasn't Josh Jacobs that was the problem in Las Vegas or Oakland before that. It's the Raiders themselves are the problem. Now, Ashton Genty is way better than Zamir White, so I don't think we're going to have those same issues this year. And I do think that it's a good pairing with Brock Bowers and Geno Smith. But bringing in so much new stuff in 1 year is always just a huge question mark. It could all work out, obviously, but there could be some like learning pains. So I don't expect them to be very dominant this year. I do expect them to be better. So they were 4-13 last year. They were swept by everybody in their division. They did beat the Ravens plus 3 other bad teams. And they faced 8 playoff teams last year. So they didn't have the easiest schedule. This year, they're facing 6 playoff teams. So since they had 0 division wins last year, I'm going to give them 2 this year. Now, there's 3 playoff teams left on the Raiders' schedule, and they were able to beat the Ravens last year. So I'm going to give them 1 win and 2 losses out of this group of these 3 playoff teams. And then this is where the Raiders could play really hard and probably double their win total from last season. The Patriots, the Cowboys, the Bears, the Jaguars are all going to be better than last year, probably. The Browns, the Colts, the Titans, the Giants, I don't see them rising that much this year, but they probably will, try to play better. So I'm going to give the Raiders half the wins and half the losses. So this puts the Raiders at 7, which would almost double what they were able to do last year. And I'm seeing heavily juiced lines for over 6.5. There's some even money lines at 7.5. So Vegas is clearly thinking 7, maybe 8 for the Raiders. I could see the Raiders losing 2 more games here, though, and going under the 6.5 line. And I could see them winning up to 2 more games as well and getting 9 and going over the 7.5 line. So given that wild range and the turnover at coach, the turnover at quarterback, the turnover at RB1, I am not betting this. But I will be watching excitedly on the Raiders this year. I think they will be a fun team to watch, even if they don't play that well. So I don't have any best bets for this division. There were no bets that were giving me any plus money to take something that I already was considering. So I didn't make any best bets in this division. However, I do have one sprinkle bet, and that is for the Chargers to be the division champions. I got it at plus 310. The Broncos are plus 300 when I got it. Obviously, these lines could have moved since then. I do think the Chiefs obviously have got to be tired after going to the Super Bowl like 4 out of the last 5 years. And I think that the Chiefs might lose their division this year and might not get that first round bye. They're going to be potentially in a wild card match, and playing those extra games might just lead to them not making it to the Super Bowl. I mean, not having that extra rest might be the difference in them not making the Super Bowl this year. And spoiler alert, if you've been following me, I've already picked the Ravens to win the Super Bowl this year. So I do think the Ravens are going to get there this year. And part of that recipe is the Chiefs potentially having to play through the wild card round. So thanks, guys. That's it. We've now covered all of the divisions in the NFL. If you've missed any of those videos, you can go check them out. Please let me know if you think I'm wrong. I love to argue about football. Please like and subscribe on the video so that you can get pushed out to more people. My picks will always be free, so I appreciate the free little things you can do for me, like liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. We will be doing daily football content probably once the football season starts. I'm also doing WNBA content right now, and we'll be doing college football content. The only sport I don't cover pretty much is hockey and baseball. Also soccer, but I do cover all the major sports. So basketball, NBA, WNBA, college football. We will do a little bit of college basketball probably, and then football as well. So thanks, guys.